Good morning, everyone. Welcome to First Baptist Church Hebron. Hopefully everyone stayed safe over the last couple days and stayed indoors and didn't have any auto accidents. I don't know if anyone saw it, but yesterday there was a beautiful scene the day before yesterday, of the ice covering the trees and the light hitting it. It looked like a wonderland. It was beautiful. That train was loud. Okay, well, we welcome all of you. Any visitors that we have today, we welcome you, and everyone joining in online. Today, I just want to mention that one of the most important things that we do in life is to communicate. And we can send loud messages, not only through our words, but through our expressions and our tones. In our effort to express what we want to say and to be understood clearly can be challenging at times. Because none of us communicate perfectly, eventually we will have misunderstandings. This can lead to a wide range of emotions, hurts, arguments, bitterness, and anger. And today we're going to learn how to handle that. So I'll leave that to the pastor. I just want to leave you with two scriptures to keep in mind, really, at any time that we're communicating with others. The first one is Colossians 3:12. Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must forgive. And Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Our Father in heaven, as we come before you today, help us to engage our hearts and minds on worshiping you. We know that your word says that unsettled grievances and disputes can hinder our worship from being acceptable. So help us to settle matters quickly, to graciously forgive, and to help us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Help us to walk in the Spirit and to crucify the works of the flesh. Prepare our hearts to learn today how to handle misunderstandings, and let us put to practice what we learn. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Well, you know how I love those folks of the 1800s. I've said that over and over again. There was a gentleman, Daniel Webster Whittle. He worked for the Wells Fargo Bank. He was a watchman. He went into the vault as a young man, and he got on his knees and gave his heart to Jesus. He, like me, did not understand God's grace, how it was made known to him, and saving faith in Jesus. He didn't understand why the Word of God brings peace to our hearts. I don't understand that either, but he read 1 Timothy 1:2 that says, I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I have committed unto him against that day. He took that verse from the King James and put it right into a song that we're going to sing.
I know not why God's wondrous grace to me hath made known, nor I unworthy Christ in love redeemed me for his own. No, not how his saving faith to me the Spirit moves, convincing men of sin, revealing Jesus through His Word, creating faith in Him. But I know who I have believed, and I'm persuaded that He is able to keep that which I command unto Him against that day. Know who I have believed, and I'm persuaded that He is able to keep that which I command unto Him against that day. That's good singing, Hebron. Right out of the King James. All right, I'm roaring just a little bit. All right, what you want to stand? You want to sit? You're behind me 30%. Is that what you're saying? Okay. All right. All right. Matthew 22 says, "The eye of the lamp is the body to the soul." But Ephesians 1:18 says it better, I believe. "Having the eyes of your heart enlightened, so that you may know what is the hope to which He has called you, which is the riches of His glorious inheritance." Some want to stand and some want to sit. And that is how we do it at Hebron. You worship as you wish. I'm going to sing as I do. It's a little bit different. You sing it out as you do to the Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. Clap if you want to also. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. High and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. See you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy.
You can be seated. I have something very special for you this morning. I believe that I sort of orchestrated, if you will, because someone asked me when we could do What a Friend We Have in Jesus. And I love that song, and so we are. We're doing it in a very special way. But I want to introduce, first of all, Abraham on the guitar today, Abraham Vanelli, who brings his whole family. And let me tell you how I met Abraham. I'm a chaplain for Marketplace Chaplains. I was speaking to one of the ladies in a cubicle about her music and about how we need certain things at our church. And it was overheard by Katie Paris in the next cubicle. And when I got to have my special time with my Katie, she said, you know, we have a whole family that we are hosting from Brazil. Every one of them plays some kind of instrument or sings. And the Father Abraham, if you will, plays acoustic guitar. And she showed me, and I was thinking, wow, you know, we need to have them sometime at Hebron. I'd love to invite people in. And she showed me a video of Abraham sitting on the ground with his guitar playing What a Friend We Have in Jesus. But where's Bob? You want to hear this? He cares for the horses at their property. Here comes these little horses. They all come up to hear What a Friend We Have in Jesus. It was the coolest video. Maybe I'll share it with you sometime. But today I'm just sharing Father Abraham with you, and we welcome you to his family, and to the Paris family too. So here we go. What a friend we have in Jesus. A very special way.
What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there any trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Can we find a friend so faithful who will all our sorrows share? Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer.
Special. Occasionally I think of this song, There's Room at the Cross. First time I sang it was at my grandmother's funeral, and it was her wish. I didn't even know the song, but I kind of halfway learned it, and I went to the funeral in California, and I thought I would be singing to my family and the people there, but the microphone and the system was in a little bitty closet, like way out. Just a cappella, not knowing what anybody else was hearing. And I thought, oh my gosh, Granny, forgive. But as I sang it, peace and a love from the Lord just overflowed me. And a hedge of protection was around me as I sang her wishes. And only my grandmother, and I know you have people like this in your life, would wish, and her desire would be an invitation song at a funeral. That was my granny. One more could come. The cross upon which Jesus died is a shelter in which we can hide. Its grace is so free and sufficient for me, and deep is the fountain and wide as the sea. There's room at the cross for the millions have come, there's still room for one. Yes, there's room at the cross for you. The millions have found him a friend and have turned from the sins they have seen. Through sunshine and rain, through loss and gain, the blood flows from Calvary to cleanse every stain. There's a room at the cross for though millions have come, there's still room for one. Yes, there's room at the cross for you. Though millions have come, there's still room for one. There's room at the cross for you.
Thank you, Donna. That was awesome. It really was wonderful. And Abraham was with you. I saw him back there. He wanted to break out in song. Abraham's good to have you. Thank you for coming. Great to see you. Yeah, we're going to talk about being misunderstood. You ever been misunderstood? Of course not. You're so clear and concise, and all you say, no one ever walks away and thinks, wonder what they thought. No, we've all been misunderstood. The thing that I think I like about sports is it always has an umpire or a referee or somebody there when there's a misunderstanding. That's always a good thing. Now, in the old days, when Reggie and I used to watch baseball, if you were a pitcher and you threw at a guy, you only threw at him just to back him off the plate a little bit. Or you threw to hit him. Don Drysdale said one time, an intentional walk is a waste of 3 pitches. And he said his favorite pitch was the one right at the guy's head, because that let him know his favorite pitch was the second one of those, because he said that let the guy know that first one wasn't an accident. But there's a great story about Bob Gibson. Bob Gibson was one of the toughest guys you'd ever want to meet. And Willie Mays got in to hit against him, and Willie Mays had this habit. He'd get in, he'd dig in with his front foot, and then he'd dig in with his back foot. And I'll guarantee you, little Reggie, when he was in Little League, did the exact same thing. I bet he went up there just like Willie Mays, digging in and flipping that bat around. Well, he dug in against Bob Gibson and made him mad. So he threw right between his eyes, and he went down to the ground. And he while he's on the ground, the catcher, Tim McCarver, said, "I wouldn't do that if I were you. It just makes him mad." And so he got back up, determined. He dug in again, even harder. Next pitch, right between his eyes. And Willie Mays, while laying on the ground, he said, "Would you go tell Mr. Gibson I won't do that again if he doesn't throw it at me again, please?" And the guy said, "I'll go ask." And he went and asked him, and Bob Gibson said, "He better not do it again." And there's actual video of Willie Mays getting into the batter's box like this, and then smiling at him. So the idea of an argument of chasing the mound, now that's what they do. You remember Don Baylor? Don Baylor played center field for the Baltimore Orioles. The greatest thing about him is you could throw it at him, and he'd stand there and let it hit him, and he'd act like it didn't hurt, and he'd go on to first. But not now. Now it's all different. Boy, anybody sends any kind of message toward your head, you go running to the mound. You're in for a fight. And you're not going to listen to the umpire. You're not going to listen to anybody. You're going to run right straight at that guy, and you're going to knock him in the head for throwing it at you. Yeah, that's a different way to do it, but that's what they do it now. And once the batter gets out there, the catcher's trying to catch him, the batter gets out there to the pitcher, takes a swing or two at him, and then everybody comes out of the dugout. Well, a guy named Robin Ventura tried that one day, right out here at Texas Stadium. And here was the result for Robin Ventura. Now, Robin Ventura got no hits that day, except that he got hit about 6 times. And you see the melee there, and then you see the after effect of Nolan Ryan. And, so there are misunderstandings, and when you have them, if there's not an umpire there to settle them, I think about a hockey game. I mean, really all a hockey game is, it's a hockey game and a fight breaks out. It's actually a fight where a hockey game might break out. But those guys, they throw the gloves off and they go after you with that big stick. And the referee in that game, I've never, he turns into like a super skater. He starts going backwards and showing you his moves. Like maybe if I do some skating moves, they'll stop fighting. And he's gone. But we don't get that. We don't get that in a misunderstanding. When we have misunderstandings, they hurt. They go deeply, and they many times hurt because of who you're involved with and the depth of the relationship when it really begins to hurt. Let me give you some examples from the Old Testament of being misunderstood. What about Noah? Think Noah was misunderstood? You think even his family understood? What in the heck are you doing? Noah would get up every morning and start to build an ark. It's just a great big boat. Now, there's really no seeming problem with that. There was a guy in my neighborhood named Frank Miller, and he got up every morning and started building a boat. Frank was a little crazy, and his boat didn't look anything like an ark. But this guy was getting up every morning, and he was making this thing so many cubits by so many cubits. And when they asked him about it, he would say, well, this is what God told me to do. Now, here's the interesting thing. It had never rained. Ever. Like ever, never. And he kept saying there's going to be a flood. And everybody around him, even his family, said, what's a flood? He says that's when it rains so hard that the water can't go anywhere. And they looked at him and said, what's rain? So you see, he was misunderstood. Another guy I think about in the Old Testament is Moses. How misunderstood poor Moses was. If you watch the trek through the desert for all those many years, how many times those people misunderstood that man. Matter of fact, every pastor I know tells themselves, every time I'm worried over my congregation, every time they're bothering me, I read about Moses. Moses was stuck with these people, and they couldn't get it right. They kept going a different direction. Even Moses himself never saw the promised land. Then I thought of Joseph. Remember, Joseph was a righteous man, and Potiphar's wife came at him and began to push on him for him to be inappropriate with her, and he ran. And yet he was still accused by her, still put in prison by her. And he had to get through all that. And then I think of David. David, he's just minding his own business. He's a young guy. He's out tending the sheep, and he comes in one day and he finds out about where the battle is, and he's supposed to take lunch down to everybody, and he runs over there, and there's a great big giant, and the whole Israel army is cowing down to that giant. And David said, I can take him down. I've taken down a lion. I can take down that. I've taken down a bear. I know I can take down him. And a lot of it was strategy. I mean, when you think about it, he knew what he could hit with his slingshot, and he knew how to run. See, most of the other guys, I don't know, in the army in those days, hey, let's run right at the person and let him kill the most of us before we get there. Not David. He was zigging and zagging. He looked like an open field runner. He looked like Emmett at his prime. And he had that guy confused, circled him a few times, and the guy couldn't get turned around. And when he finally got turned around, boom, he got a rock. And he saves Israel. So much that the king brings him in, but then you remember what happens. The king becomes jealous of him and begins to chase him down to kill him. And so David is misunderstood, completely misunderstood. And it happens for years before finally he takes over the kingdom. Well, I'm going to show you Jesus misunderstood several times by differing groups, beginning by the Pharisees. Look at Mark, in chapter Mark, verses 1 through 4. It says, Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. And since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. And Jesus said to the man with a deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." And then he turned to his critics and he asked, does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Not a multiple choice. He's asked him two questions. Should I do this good or should I do evil? By the way, this is early in the ministry, and they would have stood there and they would have looked like critics, but they wouldn't have issued anything to him to let him know they were critics. He just knew. You can tell. When you're around legalism, you can tell, right? Have you ever shown up somewhere where you weren't dressed right? And you walked in, everybody else was dressed a different way? You can tell. It's on their faces. If something has been said about you and you didn't have any control over it, and they see you, you can tell that you've been talked about. Trust me, I've walked in many a room where I got the frozen shoulder, and it doesn't feel good. So he says, is it okay to do good, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or destroy it? But they wouldn't answer him. You know, usually people that misunderstand and don't want to understand don't answer. It's hard to bring them out. It's hard to pull them out. And then it seems like when you do pull them out, here it comes. And it's heavy and it's vile. And it just keeps coming and coming and coming. You know, Jimmy Draper used to say all the time, perception is the cruelest form of reality. What somebody perceives about you in their mind becomes their reality. It becomes who they are, and how they think about you. That's what makes it so hard. It turns into a hard reality in their mind. So, the greatest distance between two people is to be misunderstood. When you're being misunderstood, that's the greatest distance in that relationship, whatever that relationship is, you will become. One is pushing the other away, and the other is trying to be understood, and they're moving toward them, and yet they have to back off because of how it feels. So Jesus heals on the Sabbath. Look at what it says. It says, and this is verses 5 and 6. He looked around at them and angrily and was deeply saddened by their hearts. Then he said to them, then he said to the man, hold out your hand. So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away, and they met with the supporters of Herod's to plot to kill Jesus. They were replacing their laws for relationships. Can you imagine you healed a man's hand? His hand was withered. It had been withered for years. And you healed a man's hand, and because you did, they wanted to kill you. Now, they didn't want to do it. They wanted to have Herod do it. So they go immediately to Herod and they start concocting their idea, which will end up being Calvary, all the time not understanding that God knew exactly what they were going to do. And so he has this massive misunderstanding about with the Pharisees. Now, they were obeying, you say, well, what laws were they obeying? They were obeying the Mishnah laws. See, there are 613 laws of Moses, and Jesus never broke one of them. It says he lived out his life perfect in the law and all other things. He never messed up. He never sinned at all, and yet they were quoting their Mishnah law, and the Mishnah law was the commentary that they would write about the law. So Moses would write these 613 laws, and they would write law after law after law, and one couldn't countermand the other. The other one had to take the other one in and include it. And so when you get to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, they've got hundreds of laws that go with that. Hundreds. It means you can't do this. It means you can't do that. It means you don't do that. Don't do this other thing. Can't go here, can't go there. Can't walk across the field, because if you do, some of the weed will hit up on your robe and you'll be thrashing, and that's work. You can't do anything on the Sabbath day. Now, what did God intend when through Moses he said, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy? He meant, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. That's what he meant. Not hard to understand, doesn't take any deep exegesis. All you have to know is God picked one day, and he said, on that day, you tithe it back to me. It means you honor me. You care for me. Now, can you do that while doing another activity? Pretty much, especially if the activity is taking care of people. If you're caring for someone, if you're healing someone, to me that would fall within the law of God, not the law of man. But they had taken their laws and made them so very important to them that now the law became more important than the Word of God. What they said about those 613 laws becomes more important than what those 613 laws actually say. And so he has this massive misunderstanding with him. And notice Jesus doesn't do anything to change it. He recognizes what's going on, and he does nothing. Matter of fact, he instigated the misunderstanding. That's interesting to me. That he wouldn't just come in the synagogue, be there, and then later heal the man. He was kind of siding up where everybody's going to land. He was figuring out what everybody's going to do, although he already knew that. So what he did was he went in and he said, hey, there's a guy with a withered hand. Is it okay to do something good and kind and wonderful on the Lord's day or not? And for them, the answer was no. For him, the answer was always. Always. And so he, if I could say it this way, Jesus is picking an argument to make a point. And he's picking an argument with the religious leaders of the day. There's a lot of reasons why Jesus came when he came. First and foremost and always, it's because this is exactly when God intended him to come. But if you knew the culture of that day and you saw the religiosity, if you saw how religious the Pharisees were, you would understand why. It was the perfect time for him to come. It was the perfect time for him to have the backdrop of what it was they were doing against the backdrop of what he would bring, his own grace. And so he knew that. That's why that time was chosen. That's why he came exactly when he came, and he came exactly at the right time. Well, then he has a misunderstanding by people. In verses 20 and 21, it says, "One time Jesus entered in a house, and the crowds began to gather again. And soon he and his disciples couldn't even find time to eat. And when his family heard what was happening, they tried to take him away." He's out of his mind, they said. Now, it hurts when there are others in your life who misunderstand you. That's really not true. Some people misunderstand me. I could care less. Matter of fact, I'm so excited they misunderstand me. You ever felt like that about anybody? I mean, they just, they don't get you, you don't get them. And Paul would say, as far as it is for me, be at peace with all men. So they can go over there and I'll go over here. But in this case, this is not some stranger. This is not the Pharisees. This is his family. Now, a chapter earlier, he was in a house. And when he was in that house, the men dropped a man who was paralyzed. And they dropped him through the roof, and Jesus healed him. And he was criticized and misunderstood when he did that. Now he's in another house. He's teaching and he's healing. But this time, his family comes. And look what they said. He's out of his mind. Have you ever had your family say that about you? I've had it individually said. My dad has grabbed me a couple times and pulled me away from some stupid, dangerous thing I did as a kid, and he's shaking me. He said, "What, are you crazy? What, are you out of your mind?" That's not what he meant. They mean that Jesus has lost it, and they're coming to get him. I don't know what their plan was. I don't know if their plan was to take him home and calm him down. Nobody knows what their plan was. But their plan was it also shows that the family probably didn't understand who Christ was. There's no indication Mary wasn't involved in all this. So when people talk about the veneration of Mary and all that other stuff, I think Mary was caught up with the family. When you have a family disagreement, it's bad. It's bad. Some of you are living out a family disagreement. Some of you have people that you love, people that you care for, and they don't speak to you. They don't want anything to do with you. I remember being 7 years old, and my Uncle Gene and Aunt Nina decided not to ever have anything to do with the family ever again. I was crushed. He was my favorite uncle. I mean, he looked like Bob. He was a cowboy. Makes me want to hug Bob all the time, but I don't. He would certainly misunderstand. But my Uncle Gene looked like him. My Uncle Gene had horses. My Uncle Gene, he was like John Wayne. He was tough. He had to shave nose hairs off the top of his nose. And he was a plumber, so his knuckles looked like equipment. He was tough. He was my favorite. And so what happens? I don't see him again. I don't talk to him again until I'm 27 years old. Now, I had the privilege to do his funeral. I mean, we got it back together as a family. And I remember when they were trying to decide what the riff was, that they never could quite land on what it was. I mean, they knew, but they couldn't quite land on why and who, and it didn't matter at that point. That's the other things about misunderstandings. You can have them, and if there's real love there, they don't matter. They don't matter. I don't even want to start to say I understand Donna every second of the day. There are a number of times during the day I'm like, what? But I know to trust, right? And that's the difference. In the relationship, you know how to trust. So even if somebody that you love, if somebody that's close to you does something that you misunderstand, you've got to back off and give it some time and let it have some room to breathe, some patience. And one of the problems many people have in relationships is they want to talk about all the misunderstandings. They want to talk about all the things that are wrong. That's why when I get a couple in my office and they first come in, and boy, they're ready to go. They're ready to rail on each other. Matter of fact, I got this little joke I tell about husbands and wives coming in. Usually the husband will turn to the wife and say, now, if you don't tell any lies about me, I won't tell the truth about you. And so when you get them in there, they got like texts they want to show you, emails, and they come in loaded for bear. Here's my side, and I said, "What? I look like a lawyer to you people?" And one of the first things I say is, "Tell me something wonderful about the other person." And then we wait. It's okay with me. I get paid by the hour. I can wait. And then finally one of them will whisper something, and then the other one will whisper something, and they start connecting back to what it was that got them in the relationship in the first place, and they want it back to that. Well, then he's misunderstood by the scribes. A much more serious misunderstanding, by the way, probably even greater than with his family, when it says, but the teachers of religious law who had arrived from Jerusalem said, now you know the difference between a Pharisee and a scribe, right? A Pharisee was a teacher. A Pharisee was like the pastor. He was like a priest. He was the guy that wore all the funny hats, and he was the guy that was in charge of the synagogue. But the scribes were in charge of scribing down the law. They were in charge of the Mishnah. They took care of that, and they took care of the Word of God. When we were over in Israel, one of the guys that was with us, and he was taking a lot of pictures. I'm just saying, a lot of pictures. I think when we got back, he had like 6,000 pictures. And so we go up to the Wailing Wall, and he and I are kind of bored with the Wailing Wall. I mean, it's a wall, and you see it, and you're kind of, okay, what's next? But everybody's not done with the Wailing Wall. So he and I just venture off. We see kind of a little hole over here in a kind of fortress-looking thing, and we walk by a Jewish man who's dressed up, and he says something to us in Hebrew that neither one of us understood, so we completely ignored it and kept walking. When we got in there, it was the Pharisees. I mean, they were in there, and they were in there with kids, and they had one-on-one, and they were going over their bar mitzvahs. They were going over what they had to learn. And of course, I was ready to get out at that moment because I'm largely an obedient person. No, I'm not supposed to be there. But he was taking pictures like crazy. So they started yelling at us, and they sent us down this other hallway. We went down another hallway and saw the scribes, and the scribes were in their little cubicles, and they were writing down the law over and over and over again. So we took pictures of that, aggravating them. I think they would have thrown books at us, but they were holy books. And so finally we end up down in the area where the women and the children stay. And they looked at us like, you guys are complete idiots, aren't you? And we just begged them to show us the way out, and they let us out. And I remember we walked out, and we were kind of turned around. First thing we saw was David. He said, where you guys been? I said, I don't know. But that's the scribes. And the scribes they're involved in the making of the law, the writing of it. And there he was. it says, but the teachers of religion, the religious law, who had arrived from Jerusalem said, he is possessed by Satan. They've sat around long enough and talked about their misunderstandings that they're coming to a conclusion. And they're saying that Jesus is possessed by Satan, the prince of demons. That's where he gets the power to cast out demons. Jesus called them over, and he responded with an illustration. So they're accusing him now of being possessed by Satan, and that's the only reason he can cast out a demon. So he calls them over, and he responds with an argument. Another thing they're going to misunderstand. And he says, Jesus called them over and responded with this illustration. How can Satan cast out Satan? He asked. I don't know if you see any humor in Scripture, even at intense moments, but I can just see Jesus landing this on him. You guys are saying, I cast out Satan by Satan. How can Satan cast out Satan? You guys are idiots, right? I mean, I can see it. I can feel it. And that's basically what was happening. He said, a kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. Similarly, a family splintered by feuding will fall apart. Guess what? The whole family within the union of Pharisees and Sadducees was falling apart. It was coming apart at the seams, and he knew it, and he talked about he's identifying what kind of war they're going through. So he says, and if Satan is divided and fights against himself, how can he stand? He would never survive. And they were like, anybody got an argument for that? No. It goes on, and here's where it really gets serious in the misunderstanding. In Mark 3:27 through 30, it says, let me illustrate this further. Who is powerful enough to enter into the house of a strong man and plunder his goods? Only someone even stronger, someone who could tie him up and then plunder his house. I tell you the truth, all sin and blasphemy can be forgiven, but anyone who blasphemes the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. This is a sin with an eternal consequence. He told them this because they were saying he was possessed by an evil spirit. So many people I know have struggled over the years with the unpardonable sin. I've had people come to me and their whole lives are in uproar because they think somewhere in their past, their recent past or their distant past, they somehow cried out to God in such a way that they committed the unpardonable sin, that they swore at the Holy Spirit. There was something that they did that killed their salvation, and now they're condemned. It's not what this means. It is not what this is saying. Now, I'm going to explain to you what the unpardonable sin is. It is committed right here by the scribes. Right here. It is to say that Jesus was empowered by Satan himself, and to doubt the Holy Spirit of God while it was in Jesus, while he was in their presence. While the Holy Spirit was being manifested in the life of Jesus, they were to see it, and when they saw it and ignored it, and not only ignored it, but said, that's evil and that belongs to Satan, that was the unpardonable sin. And so here's what you have. You have the religious leaders of the day committing an unpardonable sin. The nation of Israel would suffer over that encounter right there. They would be put all over the earth, not come back together till 1958, because it was prophesied. They committed, as a nation, the unpardonable sin. So people, when they look at the nation of Israel, sometimes they would say, well, they committed that sin. No, it was their leadership that committed the sin. It was the people that were in charge. Much like today, we have the sin of abortion on demand. That is a vile thing. That is something that should never be. And it's not something that we are to commit. And yet our nation commits it every day, day after day, day after day, day after day. That's how you can be in a nation and the nation commit an unpardonable sin that you had nothing to do with, and yet you will be judged based on that thing. Because this is where you live. This is where God placed you. That's what makes it so important to speak out against those kinds of things. The denial of God's Holy Spirit while he is in their presence on the grounds that he is demon-possessed is the only way you can commit the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. Last time I looked, you're not a part of the Sadducees or the Pharisees. That's an impossibility. This comes as good news to most people who think they have committed that sin. By the way, when people start talking to you about that and they're worried about it and they're anxious about it, that tells me that you didn't commit it, because if you committed it, your spiritual life would be dead. There would be nothing to it. It'd be empty. But the fact that you're concerned about it is the greatest evidence you did not do that. They did. And they had the presence of Jesus when they did it. And so he's misunderstood by the Pharisees. He's misunderstood by the people, some his people, and then the scribes. And then he's misunderstood again by his family. In Mark 31 through 35, it says, Then Jesus' mother and brother came to see him. They stood outside and they sent word for him to come out and talk with them. There was a crowd sitting around Jesus, and someone said, "Your mother and your brothers are outside asking for you." And Jesus replied, "Who is my mother and who is my brother?" And then he looked at those around him and said, "Look, these are my mother and brothers. Anyone who does God's will is my brother and my sister." They came to get him. They made a 30-mile walk from Nazareth to Capernaum. He was sitting inside a synagogue teaching, and they came again to take him away. You know how painful it is when you are just misunderstood by your family? Someone has said to be great is to be misunderstood. And it is difficult when you're understood by your family, by your workmates, by your friends, by the people that you care about, by the people that care about you. It all hurts. And there's no sense here in that it didn't hurt Jesus either. I think when he sat there, he probably sat there for several minutes knowing that his family was just outside the door. And he wanted to go greet his mom. He wanted to go see his brothers. He wanted to go see his family. And yet he knew their intentions were wrong. They weren't correct. And he's, you're my brother. You're my mother. You're my people. It's hard. But it's a reality in many people's lives. There's some of you within the sound of my voice that the only family you have living family, but the only family you have that understands you is someone else. The church. Somebody who shares your faith. So, misunderstanding is no small thing, and yet it's a common thing. We do it without a referee, and it's hard. So what do we do? What do you do when you're misunderstood? First thing, you have to ask some questions. And the first question you ask is, who is the source of the misunderstanding? That's a really important question. Who is the source of the misunderstanding? If someone stands up and screams something at me from a crowd about me being a bigot, about me being something else that I'm not, I have to ask myself, well, who's the source here? Is this some expert that knows me intimately, knows what I say in my quiet time together with them? No. No, this is a random sort of thrown at you kind of misunderstanding. So you got to ask who, or who is it? It's somebody important in my life. It's somebody probably who knows me as good as anybody in the world knows me. It's somebody who outside of God knows me better than any other individual. Then you ought to pay attention. You ought to move close to it. Or if it's somebody who cares for you, somebody who is caring for you and has been caring for you, and all of a sudden you have a misunderstanding. You know, and the hardest thing about being in a misunderstanding is when you really love someone and you really care for them in a unique way, and you have a misunderstanding, and they end up critical of who you are. Be careful when you're the one having a misunderstanding. When you're the one generating it, be careful with your words. Because you can have good misunderstanding. You can say, now, I don't want you to misunderstand me here, but let me just share this. I think right there you might have done that different, and here's why. And then it comes more as wisdom, not as a misunderstanding. One of the greatest ways when you're with somebody so important to you is when they tell you what the misunderstanding is to just take it and say, okay, I'm not sure that's really me, but I'm going to really think about it. I'm going to really give that deep thought because of our relationship. So you got to ask who. Next thing you got to do is examine the reason for the misunderstanding to determine why. Why? There's sometimes when you're doing something and you know somebody's going to misunderstand you. You know that's going to happen. There's sometimes when you're like the guy in charge, you got to make a decision, and you know that decision is going to affect people immediately. And when it does, you got to have the courage to be the leader, and they are just going to misunderstand. You know, I've had sad days in business where we've had to let people go, where you had to say goodbye to somebody. Their job was up. Company going a different way, whatever it is. And you know you're misunderstood at the time. And you just crave for them to look at you and say, I understand. Well, they're not going to understand right then. And so you have to examine each and every circumstance and begin to ask yourself, why? Why that misunderstanding, and why now? What's going on? What's going on in my heart? What's going on in their heart? What is the real issue? And you got to drill down. The next lesson is, what lessons am I to learn in the misunderstanding? Don't let a misunderstanding go by without learning many, many lessons from it. It is a difficult classroom. There's no question about it. It's such a difficult classroom. Sometimes you have to just say, I got to leave it there. I can't do another thing to convince that person anything else other than what they think. I got to move on. I hate this misunderstanding that's happened between me and another person, somebody so close to me that they believe in their heart exactly what they're saying and that it's true, and they're going to take action on it. And I have to figure out what my lesson is. What that's going to mean to me. I know what it's going to feel like. Here's the hard thing about misunderstanding. You have two choices when it's happening to you. Two, and only two. Guess what? Both of them are hard. One of them is productive, one of them is not. At the end of the day, every misunderstanding ends itself up by piling on to some bitterness in your heart. Or you forgive it. There's no middle ground. There's no middle choice. There's I wished I could pull out fairy dust at this point and flow it over everybody, and all the misunderstandings that they're involved in right now would go away. That's not the way it works. The way it works is you either perseverate on it to a point that you become bitter and angry over that person. And when the mention of that person or the sight in your mind of that person comes along, it's just angry and frustration and everything that bitterness will bring to your heart. Or you forgive. You release it. Jesus was misunderstood in 3 areas: his action, his passion, and his power. All 3 of them were pushed against. And these were the people he came to save. You know, there are other stories I could show you. Even his own disciples misunderstood. They certainly misunderstood as they moved toward the cross. They couldn't understand why he would go into Jerusalem where he knew he was going to be deceived. They couldn't understand why they had to stay awake while he prayed. They couldn't understand what was happening to them. Peter only knew to deny him at one point. Thomas only knew to doubt that he was alive again. And over and over and over again, he tried to get them to understand, I am going to die, and then God is going to resurrect me on the 3rd day, and I will see you again. A very short, concise message. They never understood it. Their actions showed they never understood it. And Jesus just had to go through it, and then it happened, and then they all went, got it. Got it. And when I think about forgiveness, I think about a story about Corrie ten Boom. Think about Corrie ten Boom, her whole family taken away to Ravensbrück, concentration camp. And one day, after the war, Corrie was speaking on her best subject, forgiveness. She had a lot to forgive. There were things that happened at Ravensbrück that she had to forgive. There were things that happened to her mother, things that happened to her father. Watched her father die. Her little sister Betsy and her were constantly taken advantage of by the guards. She saw it over and over and over again. And so when the war ended and they were freed, Corrie ten Boom recognized the only thing I can do is forgive. If I hold this much bitterness in me, I will die in the night in my sleep from the bitterness and the pain. And so she began to forgive. She began to speak widely about forgiveness. All was going well till one day. One day she's preaching again about forgiveness. And at the end of the talk, a magnificent talk, people were walking up, weeping, crying, thanking her for her wisdom, praising God. And she said she saw a lone figure from the back stand up. And he had his hat crushed in his hand. And he was a little bit slumped over, but he had a gait that she had seen before. And she recognized his walk as he began to come toward her. He was the very guard in Ravensbrück that would violate her sister Betsy, that would violate her over and over again. And here he was, not just in this same place, but she said all over again, I had the fear of a little girl. She said, I began to shake. I felt as though the ground was sinking underneath me, and I didn't know what to do, and he continued to walk toward me. And when he finally got to me, he looked at me and he said, do you know who I am? And all she was able to muster up was a shake of the head, yes. And he began to weep in front of her. And he said, under God, forgive me. Please forgive me. I will but die if I leave here not hearing you say, you forgive me. And she did. Somebody in your life has misunderstood you. May not have been fair, may not have been right, may continue on till this day. You've got to forgive. You've got to let it go. Unforgiveness is a poison you try to feed somebody else that only poisons you. It gets buried somewhere in your life, and then it just kind of moves all over your life. You got to forgive. All the way to Ravensbrook. That much. Father, help us. Help us to understand that because we're human, we disagree, we misunderstand. And Father, many times we're harder on each other than you desire for us to be. So God, I just pray you would take the words of what you've had to say today and use them in hearts of people, that they would tenderize their heart. And maybe there's somebody needs to go and make peace with. Maybe there's an apology that needs to be made. Maybe there's a heartfelt forgiveness. Maybe the person at this point is not even living, and yet there is forgiveness work that has to be done so that we can live the life that you've called us to live that in freedom and joy. And God, we never get any further than our unforgiveness in our spiritual walk. It's always there to block us. It's always there to confront us. And so, Father, as we confront it today, I pray, God, we would break through and there would be real forgiveness in some lives. In Jesus' name, amen. I don't even want you to stand. I want you to just sit there, and I want you to think about something you need to let go of, some misunderstanding. Maybe the other person doesn't even know you still have it. I want you to ask God, as you think about it, ask him to just draw a circle around it for you. That's a great imagery, and you know God does that. If you just bow your head and say, God, put a circle around an issue of unforgiveness that I have. Just circle it. Give it a face. Give it a name, so that I can have the wonderful opportunity of bringing it before your throne and letting it go. Promise you, God can do great and wonderful things through a vehicle that has given all that they have back to God, and God has allowed them to then forgive. As you listen to this song, concentrate on only that.
Please sing with me. The cross upon which Jesus died is a shelter in which we can hide. Its grace is so free, sufficient for me. And deep is the fountain, wide as the sea. There's room at the cross for me. Room at the cross for me. The millions have come, there's still room for one, and there's room at the cross
from the cross, Jesus said what? Forgive them. Forgive them, for they know not what they're doing. You can pray that today, and God will free you up. Thank you for hearing this. Thank you for being a part of this morning, for coming out. Didn't look like we were going to be coming out at the end of the week. Looked like we were going to be staying home, but I'm thankful we all got to be here. Just excited about next week because we're coming up on the Valentine banquet. That's when? Saturday. Saturday at 5:30, and you have to sign up out here. And that way we know you're coming because we want to buy enough chicken. I told you last week, we want to buy enough chicken that I don't have to eat a neck, because that's what I always end up with, some strange piece. You know, there's that one piece you get in the Kentucky Colonel bucket, and you just get it out and go, what is it? What piece is that? Where would that go on a chicken? So anyway, we'll have lots of mashed potatoes too. So that'll be good. And biscuits and stuff that goes with fried chicken. We're going to have a good time. David has some entertainment for us. The good news is it's not David. You would understand that if David became our entertainment. But don't be misunderstood. He went and found good entertainment. We're going to have that. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to be coming back on Wednesday night. I've apologized a number of times that we haven't done any apologetics. We're getting to it, warming up to that first one, coming right at it. So hopefully this Wednesday will be a great time. Come back and do that, and then do Saturday with us, and then come back on Sunday, because I'm going to do love. All right? So I won't drag you down to the absolute bottom of who you are. We're going to talk about love. It'll be better. And it'll be soothing and wonderful, and we're going to find out, guess what? Jesus loves you. That's an awesome thing to find out. Okay, have a great and wonderful day. Go home and don't watch any football. Just take that off your radar, and have a great day. Oh, that's right, and we have, don't miss this, Girl Scout cookies right there. You go over there where all Carol stuff has been converted to Girl Scout cookies, and so this is our chance to get them to take care of their whole troop right here. So don't be stingy. Go back and buy those Girl Scout cookies, okay? And I know you get them cheaper at the store. That's not the point, okay? The point is they got to unload some cookies before they get out of here. You know how grumpy Grandpa can get, okay? So make a Girl Scout cookie stop, but don't anybody take those graham crackers that got chocolate on before I get there, because that'll be like eating the neck of a chicken again. So have a wonderful day. See you later. Abraham, thank you for coming.
Yes.
There he is up there. Thank you for coming, and thank you for bringing all these beautiful people. Mm-hmm. Those are all yours? Yeah?
Katie, Favia, and I don't know the rest, but they're all Vanellis, right?
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. You're going to come back, huh? See us again. I understand some of those down there can do some things too. So have a great Sunday.
Redeemed.